Today I will tell you a story that began under a cold freeway bridge in Ohio. A story of family lost, lies buried for decades, and a truth powerful enough to change everything. On that night, I found my grandson and his baby daughter huddled in a tent, freezing and starving. My own son had told him I was gone, erased me from his life with a single lie. Yet there I stood before Ethan, alive, offering shelter he could not believe was real. I took them home with me, but what followed, the secret that surfaced, brought him to tears and tore open wounds I thought would never heal. If you want to hear more stories about hidden strength, betrayal, and the ties that survive against all odds, remember to like, subscribe, and join me for more of my grandma life stories. My name is Caroline Monroe, 73 years old. I live in a glass penthouse overlooking the Atlantic in Miami. From the outside, it may look like a life of serenity and wealth. Inside, it has been years of silence, of absence, of carrying the scars left by betrayal. And it was in that silence that fate led me to the bridge, to the boy I had never known but had always longed for. My husband Henry collapsed with his hand pressed to his chest the very day we discovered the theft, and the thief was none other than our only son, Richard. He took everything, our savings, our trust, our peace of mind, and left me standing in silence beside Henry's grave, vowing never to forgive. For 30 years I carried that wound like a shard lodged under the skin. Outwardly I became the woman people called unshakable, an ice queen in boardrooms, an untouchable benefactor at charity galas. Inwardly, I lived as a ghost in my own home, watching the sea, but never feeling its calm. I thought my family had ended with Henry's last breath, but grief has a way of turning us towards strange roads. When an old friend invited me to travel north with a church group to distribute food and blankets in Columbus, Ohio, I accepted. It was not kindness that drove me. It was the restlessness of a woman who had sat too long in rooms that whispered only of absence. That night, the city was raw with sleet and wind. We unloaded crates of soup and bread beneath the freeway bridge, the roar of trucks above drowning out our voices. Dozens of figures lined up, hollow-eyed and silent, stretching out hands for sustenance. I moved among them with practiced detachment, placing blankets on shoulders, murmuring the same words again and again. But then, near the edge of the encampment, a thin cry cut through the storm. Not the cry of hunger alone. It was the fragile, rasping sound of a baby. I turned and saw him, a young man, gaunt, his dark hair plastered to his forehead with rain. His arms cradled a child wrapped in a jacket far too large for her small frame. His eyes, brown, weary, defiant, were eyes I knew. Henry's eyes, my husband's eyes. The bowl in my hand slipped, spilling broth into the mud. My breath caught. I whispered without meaning to, "Ethan." He looked up sharply, his body tightening like an animal cornered. "Who are you?" His voice was rough, almost hoarse. He shielded the baby closer against his chest. I dropped to my knees in the mud so that we were eye to eye. Rain seeped into my coat, but I did not care. "My name is Caroline Monroe. I am your grandmother." His face hardened, his jaw clenched. "No, that's not possible. My father told me you died. Both my grandparents are dead." I felt the weight of Richard's lie press between us. For years he had erased me, not just from his life, but from his son's. Ethan stared at me as though I were a phantom conjured by the storm. "If I were dead," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm battering us, "I could not be standing here in front of you now." "Do you believe your father's words or your own eyes?" Ethan's gaze flickered. Suspicion warred with recognition. His arms tightened around the child, whose small hand reached up, brushing his jaw. The baby whimpered, then coughed, her tiny body shivering violently. I leaned closer, my umbrella angled over them, though the rain soaked me through. "She is burning with fever. She cannot survive another night like this." Ethan's expression cracked, anguish cutting through his defenses. "You don't know what we've been through. You don't know the lies, the closed doors, the way he—" His voice broke. "I don't trust anyone." I wanted to reach for him, but I kept my hand still, steady in the mud. Then don't trust me. Trust the truth you can see with your own eyes. Your daughter is sick. She needs warmth, food, and a doctor. I can give you that tonight. The silence between us was pierced only by the pounding of rain and the traffic above. I could see the battle in his eyes, pride against desperation, anger against love for the small child in his arms. Finally, he whispered, "Her name is Lily." I repeated it softly, as if the name itself was a lifeline. Lily. The moment settled between us, fragile as glass. He still did not believe me. I could see it in the stiffness of his shoulders. But he loved that little girl more than his own suspicion. That love, not my words, opened a crack in his walls. "I will not leave you here," I told him firmly. "Come with me, one night. If you still doubt me in the morning, you may go. But Lily will not spend another night under this bridge." Ethan's lips trembled. He looked at his daughter, then back at me. One night, no promises. He rose unsteadily, mud clinging to his jeans. I stood with him, the umbrella now useless against the downpour. When we stepped out of the shadows toward the waiting car, the tent behind us sagged under the weight of water, as if it might collapse and erase all evidence they had ever been there. I walked beside my grandson, my flesh and blood who believed me dead, as we made our way toward the unknown. I did not yet know the secrets that still lay buried, the betrayals that had twisted the truth. The rain fell harder, stinging against my skin as I crouched in the mud before Ethan. He glared at me, jaw locked, his voice sharp with pride. "We don't need pity. We don't need your charity." His arms tightened around the shivering bundle pressed to his chest. The baby whimpered, then broke into a rasping cough that rattled through the thin fabric of the oversized jacket. The sound pierced the air like glass shattering. I didn't move back. I steadied my voice, firm and clear. "This is not about pity. Your daughter is sick. She is burning with fever. One more night out here could end her life." He shook his head, rain sliding down his face, mingling with exhaustion and fury. "We've been to the ER. They gave her Tylenol and sent us away. They said it's nothing serious. We'll manage." The words were stubborn, but his eyes betrayed him. Beneath the anger, I saw fear, the kind that claws into a parent when they know they are powerless. The baby coughed again, weaker this time, and her small body trembled against his chest. I took out my phone, shielded it under my coat, and called my physician in Miami. My tone left no room for hesitation. "I need an urgent pediatric consultation. Remote now." Within minutes, Dr. Reynolds was on video, his calm voice slicing through the chaos. I angled the screen toward the baby's flushed face. He frowned immediately. "That child needs antibiotics, hydration, and warmth. If she stays exposed another night, she could spiral into pneumonia. You cannot delay." I looked straight at Ethan. "You heard the doctor. She cannot stay here, and I will not stand by and watch her fade away." His grip on the child tightened until his knuckles turned white. "You don't understand. Every time someone offers help, it comes with a price. My father taught me that. He taught me never to trust a hand that reaches too easily." I kept my eyes steady on his. "Your father lied to you about me. He told you I was dead. If he could erase me, what else did he erase? You have no reason to trust me, but you have every reason to protect her. Do not let his lies dictate whether she lives or dies tonight." For a long moment, the storm roared above us, drowning every sound but the pounding of my heart. Ethan's breathing came fast, shallow. His defenses faltered with every ragged breath of his daughter. The tiny hand peeked out from the jacket, limp, fingers curled as though even sleep had stolen her strength. He whispered finally, almost to himself, "Lily, please hold on." His eyes met mine again, the fury dimmed but not extinguished. "One night, that's all. I'll go with you. But if I see one sign, one hint of manipulation, I walk." I straightened, rain soaking through my coat, and gave a single sharp nod. "Agreed. One night. But we move now." I signaled to Thomas, my driver, who waited with the car on the shoulder of the road. He stepped forward, umbrella in hand, eyes widening as he realized I wasn't alone. Without question, he opened the back door, shielding us from the downpour. Ethan slid into the seat, still clutching Lily, his posture tense, his eyes never leaving me. I followed, the smell of damp fabric and fear filling the car. Thomas closed the door, the hum of the engine sealing us away from the storm. As the car pulled onto the highway, the glow of the city lights blurred against the wet glass. I pulled out another phone, dialing directly to my staff. "Prepare the jet. We depart from Miami within the hour. Pediatric team on standby at the estate." My voice was clipped, absolute. Ethan stared at me, disbelief flickering across his face. "A jet? You have a private jet waiting like it's a taxi?" I didn't flinch. "I have resources. They are meaningless if they are not used now." His lips pressed into a line, pride and humiliation twisting inside him. "And you think this will make me grateful? That I'll fall into your arms because you flew us in your golden cage?" I met his glare head on. "I don't care if you are grateful. Gratitude won't lower her fever, but this will." The car surged through sheets of rain, headlights cutting the darkness. When we arrived at the private terminal, staff moved quickly, their faces disciplined and discreet. The Gulfstream G650 waited, sleek and silent under floodlights, engines already warmed for departure. Ethan hesitated on the tarmac, the roar of the wind whipping around him. "This feels like a trap. I walk onto that plane. I put myself and Lily into your world. What if I can't walk back out?" I turned to him sharply. "A trap is what your father left you under that bridge. This is a door. Whether you step through it is your choice, but know this, you are running out of time. She is running out of time." He looked down at Lily. Her small face was flushed, lips pale, eyelids heavy. She gave a faint cry, then coughed so hard her whole body shook. The sound ripped through him, his face twisted with a mix of rage and desperation. Without another word, he climbed the steps. Inside, the cabin lights glowed soft against polished wood and leather. The warmth was immediate, the silence almost jarring after the storm. Ethan sat rigid in a wide seat, still clutching his daughter, as though the comfort around him might dissolve if he let his guard down. The crew moved quietly, offering blankets, hot towels, water. I waved them back. "Not yet. Let them breathe." The engines roared to life. The plane began its slow roll down the runway, then lifted, piercing through layers of storm cloud until the world below vanished. In the cabin, the hum of altitude steadied. I glanced across at Ethan. His shoulders remained taut, his eyes fixed on me with unyielding suspicion. I leaned forward, voice even. "You said one night, fine, but understand this. That one night will decide everything. If you walk away tomorrow, I won't stop you. But tonight, Lily lives." He swallowed hard, his eyes flickering down to the tiny girl in his arms. She stirred, exhaled a weak sigh, then nestled into the blanket a crew member had slipped beneath her. For the first time since I had seen her, she looked at peace. Ethan's hand trembled slightly as he brushed her hair back from her damp forehead. He looked back at me, voice low, almost broken. "If she lives through this night, I don't know what comes after." The jet touched down in Miami just before dawn. The city lights stretched across the coast like a necklace scattered over black velvet. I led Ethan and Lily through the private terminal in silence. He carried her tightly against his chest, his eyes darting at every polished surface as if each one might reveal a trap. When we reached my car, I opened the door myself and gestured inside. He hesitated, then stepped in without a word. The drive from the airport to the heart of Miami was quick. When the car slowed and turned through the gates of my building, Ethan's brow furrowed. The penthouse sat atop a tower of glass and steel that rose like a blade into the sky. I had lived there for decades, but seeing it through his eyes, I knew it must have looked like another world. We entered the lobby, lit by chandeliers that glittered even at dawn. The marble floors stretched wide and flawless, reflecting every movement. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his worn shoes squeaking faintly against the stone. Lily stirred, whimpering softly. His hand soothed her, but his jaw tightened as we stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened to my penthouse, the contrast was immediate. The vast living space gleamed in the soft light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. The Atlantic stretched endless beyond the glass, waves turning gold with the first edge of morning sun. A baccarat chandelier hung above, each crystal throwing fractured light across the white marble floor. Ethan stood motionless in the entryway, his shoulders drawn back, but his expression caught between awe and resentment. He looked down at his clothes, stained, damp, still carrying the smell of the storm, and then at the gleaming floor beneath his feet. His voice came low, sharp. "You brought us here to prove something, to prove my father wrong. That's the only reason you saved us, isn't it?" I turned to face him, my tone steady, clipped. "No, I didn't bring you here for him. I did it because Lily needs to survive. Nothing else matters." His lips pressed thin, but he did not argue. He turned slightly, adjusting Lily's blanket, his eyes still flicking around the room as if every shadow carried judgment. The staff had prepared a guest suite in the East Wing, but when I suggested it, Ethan shook his head firmly. "No, we'll stay somewhere smaller, somewhere we don't disturb anyone." I studied him for a moment, then nodded. Without a word, I ordered the storage room beside the kitchen cleared. It was no more than a wide utility space with plain walls and a single window, but within an hour my staff laid out a modest bed, a crib, and fresh linens. Ethan carried Lily inside, his movements stiff but precise, and laid her gently down. Later that evening, I passed the open doorway quietly. Ethan had fallen asleep sitting upright on the edge of the bed, one hand still resting on Lily's back. The child breathed steadily now, her face flushed with warmth instead of fever. For the first time since I had found them, their bodies were at rest. In that dim room, stripped of marble and chandeliers, they looked more at peace than anywhere else in the house. The next morning, I found Ethan standing by the window of the kitchen, watching the ocean through the glass. He turned when he noticed me, his face guarded. "You don't understand what it feels like," he said flatly. "To walk into a place like this, when I've been sleeping under concrete for months. To feel like I'm tracked, measured, and out of place with every step I take. It's not safety, it's humiliation." I let the silence hold for a moment before answering. "I don't expect you to feel comfortable. Comfort is earned over time, not handed to you with polished stone. But survival is not humiliation. Your daughter is alive because you said yes last night." His hand tightened around the coffee cup he held, and his eyes hardened. "Alive because you wanted to erase what my father said about you. You want to prove you're not dead. Well, you're here, and I see you. But that doesn't make me trust you." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Trust isn't required. What matters is that Lily breathes easier this morning. You can believe or not believe whatever you choose, but the truth doesn't bend because your father said it should." His shoulders tensed, but he said nothing. He carried his daughter back toward the makeshift room, leaving me in the stillness of the kitchen. That day, I gave instructions quietly to the staff. No lavish gestures, no expensive toys, no attempts to smother them with luxuries. Only what was necessary: warm meals, clean clothes, a quiet space. The more I stepped back, the more I saw how deeply Ethan clung to his defenses. By the second evening, he had repaired a shelf in the storage room on his own, stacking it neatly with baby supplies. He ignored the suite prepared for him, refusing any space that looked like it belonged to wealth. The more modest the corner, the more he seemed able to breathe. I watched from a distance as he rocked Lily to sleep. His eyes were heavy, his movements careful, as though every breath might shatter the fragile peace they had found. He whispered words I could not hear, his lips close to her hair, and the walls he had built around himself showed cracks. Not of trust in me, but of exhaustion and the weight of carrying too much alone. In those days, every conversation between us balanced on a blade. His words cut sharp, heavy with resentment, but underneath them I could hear the reason. Richard had taught him to see every offer of help as a chain, every act of generosity as a trap. He had been raised to believe survival meant suspicion. That night, as I closed the door quietly on the room where they slept, I understood that what I offered him was not marble floors or crystal chandeliers. It was the first chance in his life to stop fighting for a single breath. The days that followed our return from Ohio moved with a strange rhythm, urgent yet quiet, fragile but unyielding. Lily was the first to change. My family physician, Dr. Reynolds, visited each morning without fail. He examined her lungs, adjusted her medicine, and left strict instructions about hydration and warmth. Under his steady care, her cough softened, her fever broke, and by the end of the week her cheeks carried a faint, healthy color. She slept longer, her tiny hands unclenched, her breaths deeper. Her recovery brought light into the rooms that had carried only silence for decades. Ethan, however, remained a shadow at the edge of every moment. He ate little, never more than half the plate served to him. He kept his answers short, his eyes distant. If I asked a question about his well-being, he deflected with a nod or a shrug. He rose early, before the staff stirred, and slipped out into the gardens. I would sometimes watch from the balcony above as he carried tools across the lawn, pulling weeds, trimming hedges, mending loose boards in the greenhouse. No one asked him to do these things, but he did them with a stubborn rhythm, as though physical labor kept his thoughts from consuming him. One afternoon, I found him kneeling in the soil by the roses, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. Lily was nearby in a stroller, shaded, softly babbling to herself. Ethan's hands moved with a surprising precision, loosening the earth around the roots without harming the flowers. I stepped closer, but before I could speak, he rose to his feet, brushing his palms against his jeans. His tone was clipped. "I'm not doing this for you. I just can't sit inside all day," I answered evenly. "You don't need to explain yourself. The garden thanks you whether you mean it or not." His jaw tightened. "That's the thing, though. Every time I accept something here, a meal, a bed, a doctor, it feels like I owe you more, like I'm in debt I'll never pay back." I held his gaze, not flinching. "You are not in debt to me. Survival should never feel like a contract." He looked away, muttering almost to himself. "It always did with my father. Every kindness was a hook." That was the root of his bitterness. He wasn't bristling at me. He was bracing against the ghosts of promises Richard had poisoned. He mistook every open hand for a closed fist hiding chains. The following evening, after dinner, I asked him to sit with me in the study. The walls were lined with shelves of ledgers and architectural sketches from decades past. He hovered at the doorway, reluctant. "Why?" he asked. I folded my hands on the desk. "Because I have something to propose. Haven Crest Properties has room for people who work hard. You need direction. I can give you an entry-level position. No title worth boasting about, no special privileges. Just a place to start." His brows drew together, suspicion cutting through his weariness. "So you want me to work for you now? That's the price." I kept my tone sharp. "It's not a price, it's an opportunity. You'll have a supervisor. You'll start at the bottom. No one will know who you are to me. If you succeed, it will be on your own terms. If you fail, it will not stain my name. It will simply be your failure to own." He stared, the muscle in his jaw twitching. "And if I refuse?" I leaned back, steady. "Then nothing changes. You and Lily still have food, still have shelter, still have care. But I believe a man dies slowly when he has no purpose, and I have no intention of watching you rot while your daughter grows." His eyes flickered. Pride pulled one way, shame the other. Finally, he exhaled, a sound that was closer to defeat than agreement. "I'll think about it." The next morning, he rose before dawn again, working silently in the garden until sweat ran down his arms. When breakfast was set, he ate more than usual, though he kept his head down. I saw the decision forming in him not through words, but through the way his back straightened, the way his eyes followed Lily as she reached for a piece of toast, as though her small hand pulled him towards something steadier than pride. Later that afternoon, he approached me in the corridor, His voice was low, still guarded. "You said entry level, no favors. No one knows my name. That's the only way I'll take it." I nodded once. "Understood." His tone sharpened again, almost defensive. "Don't think this means I trust you. I don't. But I won't let Lily grow up thinking her father never tried." I met his eyes with quiet force. Good. That's all I wanted to hear. That night, as I passed by the storage room, I paused again. Ethan had cleared the space himself, arranging supplies neatly, stacking toys beside the crib that staff had left. Lily slept peacefully, her breathing steady. Ethan sat by her side, his head bowed, humming a tune so low it was almost swallowed by the silence. For a brief moment, the harsh edges of his voice and posture softened. He was not a man chained by pride or suspicion. He was only a father, steadying himself against the weight of the world. And it struck me with a certainty sharper than any accusation he had thrown. Beneath the walls his father built around him, Ethan's heart was intact, scarred, but intact. If given the chance to build something with his own hands, he would. If given the chance to be trusted, he could learn what trust truly meant. Ethan's first weeks at Havencrest were a test of both pride and endurance. He arrived early, before most of the staff, and stayed late without complaint. I had placed him in a junior client services role, simple enough on paper, but grueling in practice. His task was to meet with tenants, listen to concerns, and file reports with the operations team. I heard from his supervisor that he didn't shy away from even the most tedious assignments. Where others rushed through the motions, Ethan listened, took notes, and followed up personally. At first, the office staff regarded him with suspicion. His clothes were plain, his posture rigid, and his tone guarded. He rarely joined conversations in the break room, and when asked about his past, he brushed the questions aside. But clients noticed something different. One tenant told the supervisor, "That young man listened to me like my words actually mattered." Another remarked, "He didn't promise anything he couldn't do. He just said, 'I'll make sure it's heard.' And I believed him." Slowly, the whispers of doubt around him shifted into nods of acknowledgement. When I asked him one evening how the day had gone, he shrugged. "It's work. People talk. I write it down." His voice was clipped, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something warmer. He was proud, though he would never admit it outright. That was the paradox of Ethan. His words pushed me away, but his actions pulled him closer. At home, Lily began to thrive. Her cheeks glowed with color, her steps grew steadier, and her laughter carried across the garden. I often found her chasing butterflies between the hedges, her tiny hands outstretched in delight. One afternoon, I stood at the balcony watching as Ethan knelt in the grass, guiding her carefully toward the flowers. She laughed so hard she nearly fell, and he caught her, scooping her into his arms. For a brief moment, I saw it. Family, restored not by wealth or power, but by the simple joy of a child's laughter. It struck me with a force I hadn't felt since Henry was alive. Later that evening, as the sun bled orange across the ocean, Ethan caught me watching him with Lily. His face hardened immediately. "Don't look at us like that, like we're your chance to fix everything you lost." I answered softly but firmly, "I'm not trying to fix the past. I'm trying to keep you both safe in the present." His shoulders stiffened. "You say that now, but nothing comes without a cost. I know how this works. One day, you'll want me to thank you, to bend to whatever you think I owe." I didn't flinch. If I wanted obedience, I would have given you a position you couldn't refuse. Instead, I gave you one most people would walk away from. You're there because you can earn what you want, not because you owe me. He didn't answer, but when he turned back toward Lily, the set of his jaw loosened. His distrust wasn't born from me. It was Richard's legacy lodged in his bones. Still, beneath it, I could see the truth. Ethan's heart was not closed. It was bruised, wary, but beating strong for the daughter he adored. Just when I thought the rhythm of our days might hold steady, shadows crept into Havencrest. Reports crossed my desk of missing funds, contracts delayed, tenants unsettled. I traced the numbers late into the night and felt the same chill I had known years before when Richard had stolen from us. It wasn't clear yet who was responsible, but the patterns were unmistakable. Someone inside the company was playing a dangerous game. The next morning, Ethan returned from work, his shirt marked with dirt from another day in the field. He found me in the study, surrounded by files. He frowned. "What's all this?" I closed one ledger slowly. Signs that not everything at Havencrest is as it should be. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "So what does that have to do with me?" I looked at him carefully. "Nothing, not yet. But you'll see things on the ground I won't. Tenants trust you. If something feels wrong, I need you to bring it to me." Suspicion flashed across his face. "So that's it. You planted me there as your spy." My voice cut sharp. "No. I placed you there to prove yourself. But you can't pretend you don't see the truth when it's right in front of you. If Havencrest falls, it affects everyone, every tenant, every worker, including you and Lily." His eyes narrowed, but his silence spoke louder than words. He wanted to fight, but he couldn't deny the logic. He pushed off the doorframe and muttered, "I'll do my job. Nothing more." Later that night, I walked past the storage room where he and Lily still slept. She was curled beneath a blanket, breathing evenly. Ethan sat beside her, staring into the dim light, his expression caught between exhaustion and resolve. He didn't see me, but I saw him, sitting at the edge of a life he barely trusted, yet unwilling to let it slip. The man who had once snarled at Charity was now rising at dawn, listening to strangers, carrying their burdens on his shoulders, and returning home to guard his daughter's dreams. Hope was no longer an idea in the distance. It was manhnya, a seed sprouting in the cracks of all that Richard had tried to destroy. The first sign of trouble came quietly. Ethan had been working late, reviewing reports in a small conference room, when his phone lit up with a number he hadn't seen in years. He froze, staring at the screen, before finally pressing answer. The voice on the other end was sharp, elegant, and cold as ice. "Ethan," Vivian said, every syllable clipped with authority. "So it's true. You're here, in Miami, hiding under that woman's shadow." He swallowed hard, his tone uncertain. "Mother, how did you—" Her words sliced across him like glass. "Don't call me that with such hesitation. You belong with us. She is not your family. She's a relic. Do you think she took you in out of love? No, Ethan. She's grooming you, twisting you, so she can parade you as proof that your father was wrong. Don't be so naive." Ethan tightened his grip on the phone. "She saved Lily. Vivian's voice turned venomous. "Saved her or claimed her? Do you even see it? Every smile, every gesture, she's buying your loyalty. You will pay for every crumb she gives you. And one day, she'll take your daughter too. She'll raise Lily as her own, and you'll be nothing more than a guest in your own life." The call ended abruptly, leaving Ethan staring into the empty screen, his chest constricting. Doubt, shame, and anger churned inside him, poisoning the fragile trust he had begun to build. 2 days later, she arrived in person. I was at Havencrest reviewing financial discrepancies when the elevator doors slid open. Vivian stepped out as though she owned the marble beneath her heels. She was elegant, every detail calculated. Charcoal suit tailored to perfection, pearls at her throat, hair swept into a style that whispered discipline and control. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked on me with the force of a blade. Her voice carried across the lobby, low but brimming with contempt. "So, Caroline Monroe, still alive, still clinging to your empire, and now stealing my son." I met her stare without flinching. "Stealing? I pulled him from under a bridge where you left him to rot." Vivian's lips curled into a smile colder than winter. "You speak as though you rescued him. He was surviving. He learned resilience from us, not from you. You waltzed in at the last moment, and now you think you've won him over. You've always been the same, draping your cruelty in the costume of charity." Ethan appeared then, called from his desk by the raised voices. His steps faltered as he saw his mother standing rigid before me. He looked between us, torn, the conflict written across his face. "Mother, what are you doing here?" She turned to him, her expression softening just enough to twist the knife. "I came for you, Ethan, to remind you where you belong, with me, with your father, not under her roof, not in her company." He shifted uncomfortably, his voice tight. "You never came when Lily was sick. You never called. Now suddenly you want me back?" Vivian's tone hardened. "Because I didn't know you were being poisoned with lies. You think she gives freely?" "No. Everything she touches comes with strings. Look around you. Look at this office. You are her pawn. Don't you see it?" I stepped forward, my voice clear and firm. "Enough. This isn't about me. This is about a child who nearly died in the cold, a child you left behind while spinning stories of strength and pride. Call it what you want, Vivian, but I don't deal in chains. I deal in survival." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. His breathing came sharp, uneven. He looked at me, then at her, trapped between two forces that had shaped his life in opposite ways. His words came out rough. "Stop talking about me like I'm not standing here. I'm not a pawn. I'm not a prize to be passed back and forth." Vivian's eyes softened again, but it was a softness laced with manipulation. "Ethan, I only want what's best for you. Don't let her turn you against your own blood." His jaw tightened, and he stepped back. "You're my mother, but where were you when Lily needed medicine? When I couldn't feed her? When I slept on concrete? You talk about blood, but you were nowhere." Her face flickered, just for a moment, before the mask returned. "Because I believed you could stand on your own. That's how I raised you. Strength over weakness. Independence over pity." The silence after her words hung heavy. Ethan's eyes dropped, shame flickering there, not because he believed her, but because he wanted to. He wanted to hold on to some thread of her love, even when it was barbed. That was his torment, loyalty to the woman who birthed him, poisoned by the reality of her abandonment. I stepped closer, my voice steady, final. "You call it strength, Vivian. I call it neglect. He doesn't need your approval to be a man. He is already one, because he chose to protect his daughter when you chose to look away." Ethan looked at me then, eyes raw with confusion and anger. "Don't speak for me. Don't speak for what I am or am not." His words cut sharp, but beneath them I heard the wound. His heart still divided between two loyalties that could not coexist. Vivian placed a hand on his arm, her touch light but commanding. "Come with me, Ethan. Leave this place before she rewrites your life to fit her image." He pulled back, the motion abrupt, his voice breaking. "I don't know who to believe anymore, but I know one thing. Lily stays where she's safe. And for the first time, that wasn't with you." Vivian's eyes narrowed, her mask cracking under the weight of his defiance. "You'll regret this. She'll own you, and you'll see I was right." She turned sharply and walked away, heels echoing against the marble, until the sound disappeared into silence. Ethan stood frozen, his chest heaving. I said nothing, allowing the storm in his heart to rage without interruption. He was not ready to choose, not yet. But the battle lines had been drawn, and for the first time, Vivian had seen that her hold on him was no longer absolute. Ethan had avoided his mother after that explosive scene at Havencrest, but Vivian was patient. She knew how to wait, how to strike, when the moment left him weakest. It was late one evening, after he had finished a long day of field visits, when she appeared outside the building. She called his name, her voice controlled, Silky. He stiffened the moment he saw her, shifting Lily's car seat against his hip. "You shouldn't be here." Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I had to see you. Alone. Just 5 minutes, Ethan. For your sake, not hers." Against his better judgment, he followed her a few steps to the side garden near the parking lot. The shadows of palm trees swayed under soft light, the city humming in the distance. Vivian faced him, her expression sharp, yet feigned with softness. "You've built your whole life on struggle," she said smoothly. And now, suddenly, she swoops in with her wealth, her power, her polished world. "Tell me, does it feel like love? or like you're being used as her trophy?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "She gave Lily medicine when no one else cared. Vivian cut in, her voice dripping venom. "No, she gave Lily medicine to polish her image. Think about it. She lives in a palace of glass, and everyone whispers about her coldness. What better way to soften that reputation than to parade a struggling grandson and his child as proof of her kindness? You're not her family, Ethan. You're her shield, a tool to keep her legacy spotless." He looked away, his chest rising unevenly. Her words wormed their way into cracks he didn't want to admit existed. He remembered Caroline's sharp tone when she told him to do better on a tenant report. He remembered her piercing gaze that seemed to measure every movement he made as though waiting for him to falter. Vivian's voice dropped lower, coaxing. "You know what I'm saying is true. Haven't you noticed how she speaks to you? Like she's training an employee, not welcoming a grandson. Every small kindness has a ledger behind it. She doesn't love you. She loves what you represent, the chance to correct your father's mistake." Ethan's throat tightened. His words came out raw. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just caught between two people pulling in opposite directions. Maybe I'm just a tool between two legacies, never a man in my own right." Vivian reached for his arm, her nails sharp against his sleeve. "Don't doubt yourself, Ethan. You are strong because you're mine. Don't let her twist you into something you're not. She wants obedience, not love. I want you to stand tall, to never bow. Come back where you belong. Leave her empire behind before she consumes you." His eyes flickered, pain burning there. He thought of Lily laughing in the garden, chasing butterflies as Caroline watched with a quiet smile. He thought of the nights in the storage room, when he hummed her to sleep and heard silence instead of coughing. He thought of how his grandmother had not once demanded gratitude, even when he spat words of mistrust at her. But then he remembered the steel in her tone at the office, the relentless expectation in her eyes. Was that love, or was it pressure disguised as concern? Shame curled inside him, heavy and familiar. He muttered, almost to himself, "Maybe Lily and I don't belong anywhere. Maybe I'm fooling myself thinking we're more than pawns in someone else's game." Vivian pressed harder. "You belong with me, Ethan, with your blood. That woman cannot give you freedom. She only binds you tighter. Don't let her make you her project." For a moment, he almost gave in. His shoulders sagged, the weight of doubt pressing him down. But then Lily stirred in her seat, a soft cry pulling his attention. He bent down, soothing her with a trembling hand. His voice cracked as he whispered to the child, "I just want you safe. I don't care about the rest." Vivian's expression darkened. "She'll never let you be safe, Ethan. Remember what I told you. Every smile hides a chain." She turned sharply, heels clicking against the stone, leaving him with nothing but the echo of her poison. Ethan stood frozen, heart pounding, his mind torn apart by warring voices. On one side, his mother's venom. On the other, Caroline's cold but steady hand that had given Lily a chance to live. He felt hollow, ashamed, like a man standing between two storms, unsure which would destroy him first. When he carried Lily back upstairs, he didn't speak a word to me. His silence was heavier than any accusation. And though he said nothing, I saw it, the battle raging inside him, where loyalty, anger, shame, and longing fought for dominance. He wanted to trust. He wanted to belong. But the seeds of doubt had been sown deep, and they would not be easily uprooted. Ethan had been working late, staying behind after most of the staff left the Havencrest office. I had given him more responsibility in recent weeks, handling tenant concerns, reviewing contracts, learning the mechanics of real estate operations. He'd taken to it with determination, though always with that guarded silence that made it hard to know what was turning in his mind. That night, he stumbled into something I had hoped to keep from him. He had been asked to organize archived files for the operations team. Somewhere between the ledgers and annual reports, he found a folder marked with his father's name. Curiosity pulled him deeper. Inside were records of loans, signatures, and desperate measures. Richard and Vivian had once mortgaged their shares of Havencrest. The numbers spoke of recklessness, debts that could have shattered the company if not for my intervention. When Ethan returned to the penthouse, the folder was in his hands. His face was thunder. He slammed the documents onto the table, his voice raw. "So it's true. My parents nearly destroyed this place, and you—" His voice cracked. "You knew all along." I looked at him evenly. "Yes, I knew." His jaw tightened. "And you didn't tell me. You let me walk into that office every day thinking I was building something real. But the foundation is rotten. My own blood tried to cash it out like pocket change." I kept my tone steady. "I didn't tell you because you carry enough weight on your shoulders. You were barely standing when I found you under that bridge. I wanted you to have a chance at work without ghosts clawing at your back." He shook his head, eyes burning with betrayal. "That's no excuse. Hiding the truth makes you no different from them. Vivian fills my head with poison. Richard twists every word he ever spoke. And now you? You say you're different, but you chose lies too. Tell me how that's any better." For a moment, silence pressed heavy in the room. Lily, startled by his raised voice, began to cry in the corner. Ethan rushed to pick her up, his arms tightening around her small frame. She clung to his shirt, sobbing. He whispered frantically, "Shh, it's okay, Lily. Daddy's here." His voice softened to her, but his eyes cut back to me, filled with storm. I stepped closer, speaking low but firm. "Ethan, listen to me. I didn't keep this from you to bind you. I kept it so you would not live chained to their failures. You are not your father's debts. You are not your mother's manipulations. You are you, and you have the chance to build differently." He barked out a bitter laugh. "Build differently? When every brick I touch turns out to be a lie? First, my father told me you were dead. Then Vivian told me you only took me in to polish your image. Now I learn that this company I'm supposed to fight for was already gambled away by the people who raised me. Maybe I'm not building anything. Maybe I'm just another pawn moving between two queens fighting over the board." I let his words cut through the room without interruption. Then I answered, my voice as clear as steel. "If you believe that, then you let them win twice. Once when they gambled with Havencrest, and again when you surrender your will. I don't ask you to trust me blindly. I only ask you to see what is in front of you, your daughter alive, your work valued, your name unbroken by their failures." Lily's sobs softened, her small fingers curling in his shirt. Ethan kissed the top of her head, but his eyes stayed fixed on me, sharp and wounded. "You keep saying I'm not them, but you hide truth the same way they did. You choose what I can handle, what I can't. That's not trust. That's control." I drew a breath, steady, refusing to retreat. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I underestimated you. But understand this. I did not bury the truth to chain you. I buried it to give you air while you learn to stand. If that makes me guilty in your eyes, then so be it." He turned abruptly, clutching Lily, his voice breaking as he spoke over his shoulder. "I don't know who to believe anymore. But I know one thing. Every secret feels the same, whether it's from them or from you. And I'm tired of secrets." The door closed hard behind him, leaving the echo of his words like a blade in the quiet. I stood in the stillness, the documents still spread across the table, their ink bleeding with the story of a past I could not erase. That night I walked through the penthouse, pausing by the storage room where he had once made a home. Empty now. He had taken Lily to the far wing, closing himself off even inside the walls I had opened to him. His voice still lingered in my ears. Maybe I'm just a pawn. I knew why he clung to that thought. Ethan had grown up in a world where every kindness came with strings, where every truth was twisted into a weapon. To him, my silence looked like the same old chain, no matter the reason. And yet, beneath the storm of his anger, I had seen it. The way he soothed Lily through her sobs, the way his hands trembled when he held her close. That tenderness was not pawnship. That tenderness was choice. Still, his trust was slipping, and if I did not find a way to hold it, Vivian's venom would claim what little ground we had gained. Ethan had always carried shame like a second skin. That night, when the penthouse fell into silence, he sat on the edge of his narrow bed and stared at the pair of shoes tucked beneath the frame. They were torn at the soles, the laces frayed, the leather scuffed beyond repair. They had carried him through nights of cold concrete and mornings of hunger, and though he now had cleaner shoes from Havencrest's stipend, he kept these because they reminded him of who he had been, and perhaps who he still was. His hand lingered on them, as though they might speak back. He whispered to himself, "You don't belong here, not with marble floors and crystal lights, not with her watching every move." His chest tightened with every word. Yet when he turned his head, he saw Lily asleep in the crib Caroline's staff had set for her. Her tiny body stretched in warmth, her lips parted in even breaths, her hands clutching the soft toy she refused to let go of. That sight unraveled him. The safety she had here was undeniable. The fever that once racked her small frame was gone, her cheeks flushed with life. And Ethan hated himself for thinking of leaving that behind. He pressed his palms against his eyes, caught between two worlds. If I stay, I'm her charity case. If I leave, Lily freezes again. What kind of man can't even choose the right prison? The following evening, after his shift at Havencrest, he made his decision. With what little savings he had scraped from odd jobs before, and the first paycheck from Havencrest, he arranged a modest rental apartment on the edge of the city. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was his, and he clung to that word like salvation. When Lily fell asleep, he packed quietly. Diapers, clothes, the toy she loved. He lifted her into his arms, her head resting against his shoulder as she stirred, then settled again. He looked around the small storage room one last time, the bed neatly made, the shelves stacked from Caroline's careful provisioning. His throat tightened. He whispered, "Thank you, but I can't live as a guest forever." By the time the staff rose the next morning, the room was empty. I noticed immediately. The silence of the wing was heavier than usual. I walked into the room and found nothing but the faint imprint of a crib mattress and the shoes he had chosen to leave behind. The ruined pair, deliberately placed in the center of the room as if to say, "This is who I am, not the man you're trying to make me." Later that day, I saw him at Havencrest. He stood in the courtyard with a file in hand, avoiding my eyes. I stepped closer, my voice controlled. "Where is Lily?" He didn't flinch, though his jaw worked tight. "Safe. With me. That's all you need to know." I studied him, refusing to let the silence stretch. "You took her out of the penthouse, out of a place where she had warmth, food, and care. Why?" His eyes flickered with a mix of anger and shame. "Because every time I watched her sleep there, I felt smaller. Like I wasn't her father, just her shadow. She doesn't need chandeliers. She needs me to stand on my own, even if that means we sleep in a place without polished floors." My voice sharpened. "You think pride will keep her fed? You think independence will keep her warm? You walked out into the night because of shame, not strength." His lips pressed into a thin line. "At least it was my choice, not yours." We stood face to face, and for the first time I saw his eyes water, not from weakness, but from the torment of a man divided. He wanted to be proud, to stand without help, but he couldn't deny that Lily's laughter in the penthouse garden had been real, that her fever had broken under my roof. Behind the hardness of his words, his love for her shone through like light through cracked glass. He didn't leave because he hated me. He left because he hated himself for needing me. In that moment, I didn't argue further. I only said evenly, "Do what you think makes you a man, Ethan. But remember this, Lily cannot eat pride, and she cannot sleep beneath independence. She needs both love and security. Don't fail her trying to prove something to me." He turned away, clutching the file, his voice low. "I won't fail her. Not again." That night, in his small apartment, Ethan laid Lily down on a second-hand mattress. The room smelled faintly of dust. The window rattled with traffic from the street outside. But he sat there, watching her sleep, whispering promises only she could hear. "We'll be okay, baby girl. Daddy will figure it out. You don't need chandeliers. You just need me." Still, The weight in his chest told him he was lying. To her, to himself, to the ghosts that followed him from both past and present. Richard returned the way a storm does, loud, invasive, impossible to ignore. He walked into Haven Crest's glass lobby with a swagger that belonged to a man who had never learned humility. The staff whispered, unsure who he was at first, until his voice carried across the marble. "Where is my son? Where is Ethan? This company, this empire, was built on what should have been mine." His words struck the air like a whip, commanding attention, forcing eyes to follow him. I stepped out from the executive wing, my heels sharp against the floor. "Richard," I said, steady, the years of silence between us crashing down. "You have no right to be here." He turned, smirk tugging at his lips, his face weathered but still proud. "No right? Caroline, you forget I am his father. That makes everything connected to him mine by extension. And Haven Crest? That was always meant to pass to me before you twisted everything." My reply cut through him like ice. "You lost that right the night you left your own child under a freeway bridge to starve. You forfeited fatherhood the moment you chose greed over blood." The words did not soften him. If anything, they fueled his arrogance. "You always had a flair for dramatics. Ethan was never abandoned. He was meant to learn self-reliance, to stop expecting handouts. I gave him the gift of hardship." His tone dripped with false righteousness, as though cruelty could be repackaged as wisdom. Behind me, Ethan appeared from the conference hall. His steps faltered when his eyes met Richard's. For a moment, his face drained of color. "Dad?" His voice cracked, caught between disbelief and something far older. Wounds reopening. Richard's expression shifted to performative warmth. He spread his arms wide. "There you are, my son. I knew they'd try to keep us apart, but here we are, finally." Ethan didn't move forward. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, his jaw tense. "You told me she was dead." His words were quiet but heavy, trembling with rage. Richard chuckled lightly, as though it were nothing more than a misunderstanding. "I said what I had to say. You wouldn't understand the complexities when you were a boy. But now, you're here, successful, standing where you belong, by my side." I cut in before Ethan could answer. "By your side? You stole from your father, from your family, and vanished with every dollar. Spencer died because of you, and when Ethan begged for help, you shut the door in his face. That isn't guidance. That is betrayal." Ethan's eyes flickered, torn. His voice rose, harsher than I'd ever heard. "You let me believe I had no one. You told me Grandma was buried, that she never cared. And now you walk in here and act like this was some grand plan?" Richard's tone sharpened, the mask slipping. "I shaped you into a man. You survived, didn't you? That bridge didn't kill you. It made you stronger. If you had stayed coddled, you'd be weak. She—" He jabbed a finger toward me. "Wants to own you through kindness. I taught you reality." Ethan's body trembled as though he might shatter. He whispered, not to Richard, not to me, but to himself. Was it strength, or was it just pain? I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice, but not my conviction. "Ethan, strength doesn't come from abandonment. It comes from love that refuses to give up. He calls neglect a gift because he cannot face what he's done. Don't carry his shame as your own." Richard's eyes narrowed, venom replacing charm. "She's poisoning you against me. She always has. Don't forget, her wealth is built on control. You'll never be her equal. To her, you'll always be the boy from under the bridge." That sentence hit Ethan hard. His face contorted, caught between fury and despair. "Maybe you're right," he said through gritted teeth. "Maybe to both of you, I'll never be more than that. But I'm tired of being the pawn in your war." He turned abruptly, walking away down the hall, his steps echoing. I wanted to call out, to tell him he wasn't a pawn, but the heart of everything, yet I let him go. He needed space, air, a chance to untangle the lies that had bound him for so long. Richard stayed rooted, smugness lingering. "See? He'll come around." Blood always calls back. I met his eyes, cold and resolute. Blood means nothing when it is poisoned. Ethan may struggle now, but he will see you for what you are. And when that day comes, he will never forgive you. For the first time, his confidence cracked. A flicker of unease passed over his face before he masked it again. He left without another word, but the damage remained. Later that night, I found Ethan in the quiet courtyard of Havencrest. He sat on a bench, staring at his hands, the night wind tousling his hair. I sat beside him in silence until he spoke. "I don't know who to hate more," he muttered. "Him, for lying, or myself, for wanting to believe him even now." I placed a hand lightly over his. "It isn't hate that will free you, Ethan. It's choosing who you become despite him." He didn't answer, but when Lily's laughter carried faintly from the staff wing, he lifted his head and his eyes softened. For her, he would have to decide which legacy to accept and which to bury forever. The attack came with precision, like a blade sharpened in secret. Early one Monday morning, whispers spread across Havencrest's open floors. An anonymous email had circulated, attaching supposed records from Ethan's past, allegations that he had stolen tools from the factory he once worked at, that he had falsified hours on timesheets, that his termination had not been due to downsizing, but to dishonesty. By the time I arrived at the office, the damage was done. Pairs of eyes shifted in corridors, conversations hushed mid-sentence when Ethan appeared. He walked through the building stiff-backed, his jaw locked, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. The man who had earned respect through diligence was now shadowed by suspicion. He stormed into my office without knocking, slamming the door shut behind him. "They're my parents," he spat, his voice trembling with fury. "My own blood, and they'd rather see me destroyed than see me stand." I motioned for him to sit, but he paced like a caged animal, his anger spilling. "Do you know what they wrote? That I stole a drill set, that I lied about overtime, that I was escorted out in disgrace, lies, every word." But lies spread faster than truth. Now the people I work beside, the ones who finally began to see me as more than the man from under the bridge, they look at me like a criminal. His voice cracked at the end, the rage colliding with hurt. I stood, keeping my tone even but firm. "Richard and Vivian want exactly this, Ethan, to isolate you, to make you doubt yourself. If you break under their story, they win." He turned on me, his eyes sharp. "And what if their story feels closer to the truth than yours does? What if they're right and I don't belong here? Every time I walk past the marble, every time Lily plays in your garden, I wonder if I'm just pretending. And now they've given everyone proof that I'm a fraud." I stepped forward, my hand on the desk between us. "Look at me. You are not pretending. You built trust here. You earned every ounce of respect you've been given, and you will not let two bitter liars strip that away." For a moment he stared at me, chest heaving, torn between believing me or collapsing under the weight of his parents' poison. His voice lowered, rough with pain. "They raised me with silence, with coldness, and still, when they speak, part of me listens, because children always do. I hate that I still care what they think." I softened, though my words stayed deliberate. Caring doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But choosing who you trust, that makes you a man. Do you trust them, Ethan? The ones who left you? Or do you trust yourself, the man who saved his daughter night after night, who worked his way back from the mud and the hunger? He sank into the chair finally, his shoulders trembling. "I want to believe I'm more than what they say. But shame has been stitched into me for so long, I don't know how to cut it out." Silence lingered until a sound broke it. Lily's voice from the hallway. Maria, the nanny, had brought her by. She ran through the door before Maria could stop her, clutching a picture she had scribbled in crayon. She climbed into Ethan's lap, pressing the drawing to his chest. "Daddy, look, it's us in the garden." Ethan's hands shook as he held it, the crude shapes of himself, Lily, and me under a bright yellow sun. His eyes filled, the hardness crumbling. He kissed the top of her head, whispering so low I almost didn't hear, This is real, not their lies." But when he looked up, the fire had returned to his gaze. "I won't let them do this again. If they want a war, then they'll have one, but I'll fight it my way." I nodded once, steady. "Then fight with truth. Expose them not with anger but with proof. Let their schemes collapse under their own weight." He rose, clutching Lily close, the drawing still in his hand. His back was straighter, though I could see the storm still raging beneath his skin. Ethan would not forget their betrayal, but he was beginning to see that his worth was not theirs to define. And as he walked out, determination in his steps, I knew Richard and Vivian had miscalculated. They thought shame would shatter him. Instead, it was forging him. The boardroom was filled to capacity, the air thick with anticipation and unease. Every director, every senior manager, even key staff from the lower levels of Havencrest had gathered at my summons. I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, my hands resting flat against the polished surface, refusing to let them see any hesitation in me. Behind me, a projector hummed softly, ready to illuminate the truth that had been buried far too long. Richard and Vivian entered late, as though they owned the room. Richard with that arrogant tilt of his chin, Vivian with her perfect posture and eyes sharpened like glass. They sat opposite me, whispering to each other with smug confidence, convinced they would outmaneuver me as they always had. I spoke first, my voice steady, deliberate. "We are here to settle not rumors, but facts. Too long this company has been tainted by shadows. Today, the light will decide what remains." I clicked the remote. The first slide filled the screen, scanned documents bearing Richard's signature, agreements ceding collateralized portions of Havencrest's assets to cover his private debts. Gasps echoed around the room. I let them linger. "These," I said, "are the records of Richard Sterling's transactions. He mortgaged what was not his to mortgage. He gambled with the legacy his father built, and I preserved." Murmurs rose, chairs shifted. Richard sneered. "Fabrications. You've always wanted to paint me as the villain. You've hated me since the day I challenged your control." I pressed the button again. The next images appeared. Photographs of Richard and Vivian seated with creditors, signing over shares, accepting cash in envelopes. Time-stamped, undeniable. "If these are fabrications," I replied coldly, "then tell us why the creditors themselves provided them. Tell us why your signatures match the same reckless hand you used to drain our accounts decades ago." Vivian finally spoke, her voice smooth but laced with venom. "If you weren't so obsessed with ruling this company like a queen, Richard would never have been pushed to desperation. You call him greedy, but you created this prison of perfection." I turned to her, my eyes narrowing. "Do not mistake my discipline for cruelty. It was your ambition, Vivian, your hunger for appearances, that drove him to these choices. I did not make him abandon his child under a bridge. That was his doing, and yours." The next image appeared, grainy, harsh, yet devastating. Ethan, hunched beneath the freeway overpass, clutching Lily wrapped in a worn jacket, rain pouring in sheets around them. The room fell silent. No words, no whispers. Just the sound of truth ringing louder than anything I could have spoken. Ethan stood at the far end of the table. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he stared at the image of himself and his daughter. He finally spoke, his voice raw. "That's who I was when you left me, when I begged for help, and you shut the door." Richard shifted, his bravado faltering. "I wanted you to learn to stand on your own." "Stand on my own?" Ethan's voice rose, cracking under the weight of years. "You didn't teach me strength. You taught me hunger. You taught me shame. You taught me that a father's love comes with conditions." Vivian reached toward him, her tone sharp. "We did what was necessary. Look at you now, strong, respected. That's because of us." Ethan's eyes filled, tears finally breaking free. "No. I am who I am in spite of you, not because of you. You call abandonment a lesson, cruelty a gift. but all you gave me was emptiness. And when I needed you most, when Lily was sick and I had nothing, you were nowhere." The silence that followed was suffocating. His words didn't just pierce them, they pierced everyone listening. The staff who once whispered doubts now looked at him with respect, with sorrow, with the kind of understanding that cannot be faked. He turned toward me then, his voice shaking but resolute. "Grandma, I can't forgive them. Not now. Maybe not ever. They are my parents, but they killed every part of me that should have trusted them. I won't let them steal what little is left." My throat tightened, but I held myself steady. "You don't need to forgive them, Ethan. Forgiveness is not a debt you owe. What you owe is to Lily, to yourself, to build a life free from their chains." Vivian stood abruptly, slamming her palms on the table. "This is a spectacle. You're all blind if you let her manipulate you. We are his blood. Blood cannot be erased." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to steel. "Blood does not excuse betrayal. Blood does not grant the right to destroy. And blood, Vivian, does not bind a man who chooses truth over lies." The board members, once hesitant, now nodded slowly, one by one. The tide had turned. Richard sank back in his chair, defeated but still seething. Vivian's mask cracked, her eyes blazing with a fury born of losing control. But Ethan stood taller than I had ever seen him. The boy from the bridge was gone. In his place stood a man, scarred, yes, but unbroken. He looked once more at them, his voice low, final. "You taught me to be strong by breaking me. But Caroline showed me strength by healing what you shattered, and that is the only legacy I will carry." The meeting ended not with applause, but with the kind of silence that means truth has landed. Nothing more needed to be said. The boardroom was still heavy with the echoes of what had been revealed. No one dared to speak first. I looked across the table and saw men and women who had worked beside me for decades, people who had questioned, doubted, and sometimes feared me. Now their eyes shifted toward Ethan. He stood straight, hands clenched at his sides, the tremor in his shoulders betraying the storm inside him. The chairman of the board, a man who had always sided with Richard before, finally cleared his throat. "Mrs. Monroe, we cannot deny what we have seen. The evidence is indisputable. Richard and Vivian compromised the integrity of Havencrest." His gaze turned toward Ethan. "But this young man, he has faced storms no one should endure. He deserves a chance to prove himself." Murmurs spread through the room. One by one, the members nodded, some with reluctance, others with conviction. The vote was cast silently in their eyes long before the papers were signed. Ethan was to be given a trial role, a path toward succession, not through favoritism, but through merit. Richard erupted, slamming his fist against the table. "You can't do this! Havencrest was built on my father's back, on my blood. You think you can erase me because she waves a few papers?" I faced him, my voice level. "We are not erasing you, Richard. You erased yourself the day you sold your honor for cash and abandoned your son beneath concrete and steel. This company belongs to those who honor its legacy, not those who betray it." Security entered quietly, prepared for the storm. Vivian rose, her perfect facade cracking. "This isn't justice, it's vengeance. You've poisoned them against us." I shook my head slowly. "Truth poisoned nothing. You did that yourself." They were escorted out, their protests echoing down the marble corridor until the doors shut and silence reclaimed the room. A silence so complete it felt like the first breath after drowning. Ethan didn't speak immediately. He looked at the polished table, then at the board, and finally at me. "You put me here, but don't expect me to wear your crown. If I stay, I'll build my own path. I won't be your puppet, and I won't be their shadow." I met his gaze. "That's exactly what I want. You don't inherit Havencrest by my word. You earn it with your own." The next morning, Ethan walked into Havencrest not as a prince returning to his throne, but as a worker with everything to prove. I watched him from the upper balcony as he greeted the receptionists, shook hands with employees, and introduced himself not as the heir, but as Ethan Sterling, a man willing to start at the bottom. His first assignment wasn't glamorous. It was reviewing property maintenance logs for our Midwestern branches, a task most executives avoided. But Ethan accepted without complaint. At lunch, he sat not in the executive dining room, but among the clerks and junior analysts. He listened more than he spoke, jotting down notes, asking questions with genuine curiosity. For the first time, the people of Havencrest looked at him not as Richard's son, not as Caroline's grandson, but as Ethan, a man trying to find his place. That evening, in the garden behind my penthouse, he finally approached me. Lily toddled on the grass, chasing butterflies in the warm Miami light. Ethan leaned against the railing, his face torn between pride and shame. "I don't know if I deserve this," he admitted. "Every time someone looks at me, I wonder if they see a leader or just a boy who once lived under a bridge." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "They see both, and that is your strength. They see someone who has known the bottom and refuses to stay there. They see someone real." He shook his head. "I still hear their voices, my parents, the way they looked at me today, like I betrayed them just by breathing. It's hard not to wonder if they're right, if I'll always just be a pawn between stronger players." I turned him toward Lily, who had collapsed in giggles on the lawn. "Do you see her? She doesn't care about pawns or crowns. She cares that her father is here, that he fights for her, even when he doubts himself. That is leadership, Ethan, and it cannot be faked." His eyes softened, but his jaw remained set. "Then I'll prove it. To them, to the board, to myself. But I'll do it my way. No handouts." "Then you've already taken the first step," I replied quietly. Weeks passed. Ethan arrived earlier than most, left later than all. He worked through property disputes, tenant complaints, construction delays, tasks that would have broken lesser men. Slowly, whispers in the office shifted. No longer was he just the grandson rescued from poverty. He became the man who stayed late to resolve a family's eviction, who visited sites unannounced to see conditions firsthand, who listened instead of boasting. I watched him grow, not by inheritance, but by grit. And though he carried the scars of betrayal, he also carried something brighter, the possibility that Havencrest would, at last, belong to someone who had bled for its name. Yet even as I saw hope, I knew storms still lingered beyond the horizon. Richard and Vivian were not the kind to vanish quietly, but for now, Ethan stood in the light, unafraid, a new generation daring to claim what was his, not through blood, but through will. When Ethan decided to move into a modest house near Miami, I knew it was the right choice. He needed distance, not from me, but from the shadow of the penthouse that had held so much of our family's history, both painful and proud. His new home was small, painted in pale blue, with a little porch where Lily could sit and play with her toys. It was nothing like the grandeur of Havencrest, but it was his. And for Ethan, that mattered more than gold ceilings or marble floors. He still came by often, bringing Lily with him. On weekends, the garden of Havencrest echoed with her laughter as she chased butterflies or toddled after the koi pond. One afternoon, while Ethan spoke with one of the managers about a project, Lily ran toward me, her curls bouncing, her small arms lifted. "Grandma Caroline!" she called, her voice pure and unguarded. The words pierced me, not with pain, but with a joy I had not felt in decades. I knelt, catching her in my arms. "Yes, darling," I whispered into her hair. "Grandma's here." For years, this house had been filled with silence, cold corridors echoing with nothing but the sound of my own footsteps. Now, it pulsed with life again. Lily's giggles, Ethan's firm voice, the sound of a family slowly knitting itself back together. But I did not mistake warmth for healing. Healing is slower, quieter, full of jagged edges. Ethan often kept his distance, polite but guarded. At dinners, he would thank me for the meal, yet keep his eyes on his plate. When I asked about his projects, he answered with careful brevity, as though afraid I might judge him. One evening, as Lily played in the garden lights, I approached him. "You're doing well at Havencrest," I said gently. He gave a small shrug. "It's just work. Anyone could do it." "Not anyone," I replied, It takes resilience to win the respect of those who once doubted you." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sometimes I feel like I'm still proving myself to ghosts. No matter what I do, I hear my Father's voice telling me it's not enough. And even when you praise me, I wonder if it's out of pride or pity." His words stung, but I did not retreat. "Ethan, if I wanted to pity you, I would have left you at that bridge. I don't see a broken man. I see someone who carries scars yet still stands. That is not pity. That is respect." His jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed the conflict inside him. He wanted to believe me, yet years of abandonment had carved doubt into his soul. I let the silence settle between us, not pushing further. Healing cannot be forced. It must be chosen. Later that night, after they left, I walked through the penthouse halls alone. For the first time, they no longer felt empty. Their laughter lingered, like embers in a long-dead fire beginning to glow again. In the weeks that followed, small shifts appeared. Ethan called more often, not always for business. He would ask if I had eaten, if Lily could spend the weekend with me, if I needed help with the garden. His tone was still cautious, but the cracks in his walls were widening. One Sunday, we sat on the porch of his little blue house. Lily was asleep inside, her toys scattered across the floor. Ethan handed me a cup of tea. His hands were rough from work, but steady. "I never thought I'd see this," he admitted. "A life where Lily laughs, where I don't wake up cold and hungry. I'm not sure I deserve it." I looked at him firmly. "You deserve every breath of peace you can find. You've carried enough shame for a lifetime. Let it go. Not for me, not even for Lily, though she needs you whole. Let it go for yourself." He didn't answer right away. He stared at the horizon, the last light of day softening his features. Then he whispered, "I'll try." It was not a promise of perfection. It was not an instant cure. But it was the first true step toward forgiveness. Not of me, not even of his parents, but of himself. Back at Havencrest, Lily continued to transform the space. She would climb onto my lap during meetings, clutching her stuffed rabbit, unaware of the gravity in the room. Executives who once trembled before me now smiled at her innocence. She had become the bridge between worlds, the warmth that softened steel. And as I watched Ethan grow into his role at work, balancing it with being a father, I felt something long absent return to me. Hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the tempered hope of one who has seen ruin and still chooses to believe in tomorrow. For the first time, I dared to think that the wounds of betrayal might not vanish, but they could be stitched into something stronger, a fabric of resilience woven not by forgetting, but by enduring. And perhaps, just perhaps, the home I thought was doomed to loneliness might yet become a place of belonging. The night air on the penthouse balcony was cool, carrying with it the salt of the Atlantic. Below us, the city lights shimmered like restless stars, but it was the ocean that held our gaze. Its endless waves rose and fell as though echoing every battle we had endured. Ethan stood beside me, his hands gripping the railing, his posture caught between tension and release. He broke the silence first. "Do you ever regret it, Grandma? Coming to that bridge, taking me in, fighting for me when I didn't even trust you?" His voice was steady, but beneath it I could hear the weight of years that still clung to him. I turned toward him, my hands folded in front of me. "No, not once. The ocean takes so much away. It erases, it drowns, but it also returns what was lost, washes it back to the shore. You and Lily, you were carried back to me." He looked down, his jaw tight. "I used to think family was just blood, but blood betrayed me. When you found me, I thought it was just pity, another charity act. I didn't know if I wanted your help or hated you for offering it. But now," he trailed off, shaking his head, "now I see that love isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when everyone else disappears." I placed my hand lightly on his arm. "Exactly. And you showed up too, Ethan. You could have walked away. You could have buried yourself in anger, but you didn't. You chose to fight for Lily. That's why I fought for you." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "I wish I could unhear their voices. My father telling me I'd never be enough. My mother saying I was a burden. Some nights, even when Lily sleeps soundly, I still hear them." I didn't try to erase his pain. Instead, I spoke carefully, letting each word fall like stone into still water. "Their voices may echo, but they do not define you. The world already knows the truth. Richard and Vivian have been stripped of power, their cruelty laid bare. Justice was done. But healing, that comes from within. And I see it happening, Ethan, piece by piece." He exhaled, a shaky release, as though he had been holding his breath for years. Then he turned to face me. "Do you forgive them? After everything?" The question cut deep. I looked back at the ocean, its waves crashing steady against the rocks. Forgive? No. Forgiveness is not owed to those who never sought it. But I release them. I refuse to let their shadows control me. Justice is enough. The rest belongs to the tide. His eyes softened, and for the first time since the bridge, I saw relief flicker there. He leaned on the railing, watching the waves. "I don't know if I'll ever release them, but maybe I don't have to, not yet. Maybe it's enough that I don't let them control me anymore." Inside, through the glass doors, Lily's laughter rang out as she played with her toys on the carpet. Ethan glanced back, and his expression shifted from conflict to warmth. "She doesn't know any of this. To her, it's just Grandma's house. Safe. Warm. Maybe that's the gift, isn't it? That she'll never know the cold I knew." I nodded. "That is the gift. And you're the one giving it to her. She'll grow up knowing her father stood when it mattered most." We stood there for a long time, watching the horizon, the city behind us, the ocean before us, and the weight of the past somewhere in between. For years, my life had been marked by betrayal, silence, and loss. Now it carried the possibility of healing, of a future unshackled by vengeance. I turned to him once more. "Do you know what I see when I look at you now?" He raised an eyebrow, wary. "What?" "A man who was broken, but not destroyed. A man who carries scars, but also carries light. A man who will build something stronger than what was given to him. That's the legacy I want Havencrest and Lily to remember." His throat worked as he swallowed, and his eyes glistened. He didn't hide the tears this time. "Thank you, Grandma, for finding me, for not giving up when it would have been easier to let me go." I squeezed his hand. "You thank me now, but one day you'll understand. It was never a choice. Family, when it's real, is not a transaction. It's a truth. And the truth always finds its way home." The waves rolled on, tireless, eternal. Behind us, the penthouse no longer felt like a monument to solitude. It felt alive again, warmed by laughter, by hope, by something as simple and profound as a child calling out Grandma. Justice had been served. The villains of our story had been unmasked, their empire of lies crumbled. But the true victory was not their downfall. It was this moment, standing on the balcony with Ethan, the ocean at our feet, the past behind us, and healing ahead. The night sky stretched wide, endless, and I felt peace settle over me. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of survival. The kind of peace earned only by enduring storms and refusing to bow to them. And as the waves whispered against the shore, I knew the story was not about vengeance. It was about return, about love finding its way through ruin. Ethan looked at me once more. "Then this is the beginning, isn't it?" "Yes," I answered, steady and sure. "The beginning of everything that should have been."